Welcome everybody. I am so glad you're here. I'm sorry we can't meet in person, but I think this is probably the next best thing. My name is Angela Henry. My session is an introduction to Azure Data Catalog. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we do that, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew the different options that you had available to you as a member of PASS. So PASS has lots of things out there and tons of free resources at pass.org. And just recently, they've offered the PASS Pro membership where you get exclusive training and networking opportunities. Obviously, tons of local user groups. We have SQL Saturdays, which are free one-day training events. We've got PASS Marathons, which are back-to-back live webinars, virtual groups, and PASS is always in need of volunteers. So get involved. It's your organization. Next, please give us your feedback on the session. Not only for me as a speaker, but for PASS, it's super important so that they can ensure that they're providing quality content to our attendees. So please be sure to fill out the session evaluation. And as a bonus, if you do it before Friday, November 20th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, you can be eligible to win prizes. So a little added incentive this year. Quick bit about me. Again, my name is Angela Henry. I am a solution architect at Blue Granite. I tweet. My handle is SQL Swimmer. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you like. Just a kind of a quick note on LinkedIn. If you do request to connect with me on LinkedIn, please tell me where you saw me. Being a woman in IT can be a little sketchy at times in social media. So if I'm not familiar with your name, if it doesn't resonate with me at all, if I don't remember, just let me know where you saw me, and then I'm happy to connect. So thank you for that. I am a data platform MVP. I also have an MCSE in data analytics and business intelligence, and I am a Microsoft certified trainer. And my Twitter handle, SQL Swimmer, where does that come from? Well, not only am I a swimmer, but I'm also a coach and an instructor. So I'm going to take this opportunity to get out my soapbox and say, if you don't know how to swim, please learn. It is the only sport that could save your life. And if you think as an adult that you can't learn how to swim, you're absolutely incorrect. There are instructors like myself who are specially trained to teach adults how to swim through US Masters. So please learn how to swim. All right, putting my soapbox away, let's get started. What are we going to talk about today? Well, first, why are we even talking about Azure Data Catalog? We'll talk a little bit, why are we even talking about this? Then we'll talk about what Azure Data Catalog is. We'll walk through a demo of creating a catalog. We'll do some exploring, so get out your little spelunking helmets and your little lights because we're going to explore a little bit. And then we'll talk about how you manage those data assets within Azure Data Catalog. But first, we're going to do a selfie. Now, normally when I do sessions in person, I take a picture of myself presenting to my class and then I post it up on social media. But in this case, I don't have that luxury, so I'm going to do it right now. There we go. All right, posting it up on Twitter. And I encourage you guys to do the same thing. We're not meeting in person, so I can't see your bright, shiny faces, but I want to see who's attending in my session. So please take a picture of yourself learning and listening to my session, put it up on Twitter. You can tag me, or you can use the PASS Summit hashtag. All right, let's keep going. So, why are we talking about this today? Well, the biggest reason is data governance. So there's been a big push for data governance lately. I mean, I'm sure we have all seen in the news about all the different data breaches that are happening almost every day. And these are not just small companies. These are big companies that are being affected by this. So data governance is kind of at the forefront. And part of that effort of data governance is to really kind of put I don't want to say restrictions, but put controls around the people, the processes, and the technology that are used, so that you can provide a consistent and proper handling of that data across your entire enterprise. And it ensures that you have high quality data. So that is the biggest reason why we are talking about Azure Data Catalog. So some of the areas that we need to focus on with data governance is availability. Make that data readily available. Usability. Is it in a format that's usable? Consistency. Is it consistent across your enterprise? Data integrity. We all want our data to be correct. So we really need to stop and think about data integrity. That's a really big component of data governance. Data security. So while we need to make it readily available, we also need to secure it so that it's only available to those who actually need the access. And then lastly, accountability. We need to have processes in place to ensure that we have some effective data management and having accountability for adverse effects if we have poor data quality or poor data security. So that's why we're talking about Azure Data Catalog. So with that, let's talk about, well, what is Azure Data Catalog? But before we talk about Azure Data Catalog, we need to start by defining what a data catalog is. And before we can do that, we have two very important questions that we need to ask. The first one is, how many data sources do you have? Do you have just one? If you do, you are a unicorn, and I am so envious of you. Do you have 2? Do you have 20? Are you not sure? You kind of see where I'm going with this. Do you know where all of your data sources live? Do you know how to connect to them? Well, that's where a data catalog comes in, because nobody has just one data source. So where do you keep that data source information, like the server name and the connection, or a description of it? Do you keep it in your head? I know that in some organizations, if the DBA or the developer is out for a specific project, nobody knows how to connect to a data source that is part of that project. Do you have it in a spreadsheet? Do you have it in multiple spreadsheets? Do you know where all those spreadsheets live? Do you have it in SharePoint lists? You see where I'm going with this. It's probably not organized, and it's probably not in a single location. And that's where a data catalog comes in. It's organized metadata about your data sources. It helps you store the location, the connection information, and the description of your data catalog. So the big thing here is that it's organized metadata about your data. It doesn't live everywhere. It lives in a single location. So with that, what's an Azure Data Catalog? Well, Azure Data Catalog, it's a fully managed cloud service that serves as a system of registration and a system of discovery for your enterprise data sources. Azure is Microsoft's version of the cloud. So that's where the fully managed cloud service comes in. System of registration. So it allows you to go out and register all of your data sources in there. System of discovery. It actually has a tool that will help you go out and discover your data sources. And it does it for all of your enterprise data sources. So who should be using Azure Data Catalog? What is its intended target audience? Well, it's designed for both technical and non-technical users. So you have your data developers and you have your BI and analytics professionals. So these are the people who are responsible for producing data and analytics content for other people to consume. So they definitely need to be using Azure Data Catalog. Then you have data stewards. These are the people who have the knowledge about the data, what it means, and how it's intended to be used. Then you have your data consumers. So these are the people who need to easily discover these data sources, understand them, and connect to them so that they can do their daily job. with whatever tool of choice they choose to use. And then lastly, there's central IT. So your central IT people, it's absolutely critical for central IT people to be using Azure Data Catalog. An example that I like to use is that what happens in a disaster recovery scenario? It's central IT that's responsible for bringing all of this stuff back online. And if you don't have all of your data sources in a single location, how is central IT going to be able to bring that back for you? So, these are the people who need to make hundreds of data sources discoverable for business users, and they need to maintain oversight on how that data is being used and by whom. So that kind of goes back to that data governance bit as well. Now, because it's an Azure service that it lives in the cloud, that means that it's not available everywhere. So where is Azure Data Catalog available? Well, I'm so glad you asked. If you're in the United States, you have 3 choices. We've got 2 on the West Coast, 1 on the East Coast, and these are different data centers that are within these regions. If you're in Europe, you have 2 data centers to choose from, West and North Europe. If you're in Australia, you've got 1 to choose from in Australia East. And then the final one that's out there is in Southeast Asia. Now, there are some prerequisites in order to be able to use Azure Data Catalog. The first one is that you have to have a Microsoft Azure subscription. That kind of makes sense because it's an Azure service, so you're going to need an Azure subscription. And the next one is that you have to have your Azure Active Directory tenant already set up before you start. Now, like with anything, there are a couple of gotchas. So the first one, you have to be the owner or the co-owner of the tenant in order to set up an Azure Data Catalog, in order to create it. You can only have 1 per Azure Active Directory domain or organization. Now, I usually hear a lot of groans when I say this, but let's stop and think about this and the whole purpose of having a data catalog. It's because you want to have stuff live in a central location. Well, if they allowed you to create 30 different catalogs, how do you know which one you're supposed to be using to find your data source? So it was very purposefully done when they said only 1 per Azure Active Directory domain. You can only use your work or school email address. This is the same for Power BI. Because we're working with enterprise data sources and it works on a subscription basis, you can only use a work or school email address to access Azure Data Catalog. And lastly, if you have an Office 365 E5 license that includes Power BI Pro, you actually already have a data catalog behind the scenes. So if you're trying to create one and it comes back and it says that you already have one, check to see what type of licensing you have for your Office 365, or I guess it's now Microsoft 365, because that could be why. All right, those are all of our gotchas. Now, there are multiple editions, just 2, and the edition determines the pricing. So we have the free edition and the standard edition. So free edition allows you to have up to 50 users and up to 5,000 data assets. And standard, that allows you to have unlimited number of users. You can have up to 100,000 data assets. You get a glossary, which is super cool. So you can define those terms so that everybody is on the same page. And you get some additional security options. So free, the cost is obviously free. But with standard, you're looking at $1 per month per user. So it's a very nominal fee to get all of those additional benefits that come with a standard edition. So let's look at the security options that are available for both editions. Whether you have free or standard, you're going to have a global administrator. And these are the people who can manage the data catalog settings, and they can add or remove users to the Azure Data Catalog. Now, if you go with standard edition, you get some additional security options. I mentioned those just a couple of slides ago. And one of those is you actually get to use security groups. So you can actually enable authorization at the Active Directory security group level as opposed to individual level. And we all should be using security groups because that's a best practice. So that's another reason to go with that standard edition. You get glossary administrators. Because you now have a glossary, you also get glossary administrators if you have the standard edition. There are some additional governance capabilities that you get, like allowing users to take ownership of registered assets so you can have greater control. And then you also have asset level authorization. So you can allow users to restrict the ability of other users to discover and or annotate registered data assets. So those are some, pretty powerful additional security options that you get with the standard edition. So I would highly recommend, if at all possible, that you use the standard edition. Now, I know what you're thinking. I really do. You don't want your data to live in the cloud. We're talking about an Azure solution, and I don't want my data to live in the cloud. Well, no worries. Your data is safe in its data source. That's the great thing about Azure Data Catalog, is it's not actually storing your data. It's only storing the metadata about your data sources. So let's take a little bit deeper dive to see what we are actually storing in Azure Data Catalog. So let's look at the asset information that we're collecting. We're collecting the name of the asset. So for example, the name of the server that we're going to connect to. The type of asset that it is this SQL Server? Is this Oracle? Is this an AS400? That type of thing. And then a description. And that's it. That's the asset information. Then we drill down a little bit farther and we look at either, the attribute or the column information. And what does it store there? Basically the same thing. The name of the attribute or column, the data type, if that's applicable, and a description. And that's it. So your data isn't going anywhere. We're only storing metadata about your data source. And that's an Azure Data Catalog. Now let's walk through creating a catalog. We have a couple of prerequisites that we need to remind ourselves of. So firstly, we have to have an Azure subscription. I've already got one, so I'm good there. We have to have our Azure Active Directory already set up. I'm good there too. I've already got that created. And you can only have one per tenant. Well, I haven't created one in my tenant yet, so we're good to go. So let's go and create and configure an Azure Data Catalog. So I've started off, I've just logged into portal.azure.com. I've got my dashboard up here. And I've got my Azure Data Catalog resource group pinned right here. And right now it doesn't have any resources in it. So I'm going to go ahead and let's create that Azure Data Catalog. So if I click the Create Resources, and let's just search for it because that's the easiest thing to do. And there it is. And when it comes back, there it is right there. So we're going to select that one. You get all of the information about the Azure Data Catalog here. All of the different plans. So you've got the free and the standard. Any usage information and support. All of that kind of information. So let's go ahead and click Create. And when I do that, so remember I have to have an Azure subscription. Well, I've got mine here. We need to put it in a resource group. I've already created that. Now we need to give it a name. So I'm going to name it Pass Summit Demo. And, oh, look at that. And never type in a demo because I do things like that. You cannot have any spaces in that. And once you create it, you cannot change the name of the catalog. So name it wisely is my suggestion. Location, we need to select a location. So again, there's that list that we went through. I am on the East Coast, so I'm just going to pick US East. And then you can select your pricing tier. It defaults to free, but you can click the change pricing tier and you can select standard if you like, and it tells you the cost. Right now, I'm going to leave it at free, and I'm going to select that. And now we need to add some tags. Best practice is that you always add your tags. So I have some that I use in mine. All right, I've added my tags. And it looks like we're ready to create it. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. And it's going to go off and it's going to do its little thing and it's going to think about it. And through the magic of video editing, our deployment is complete. Now, normally it takes 1 to 2 minutes. I've seen it take as many as 5 minutes before, so just be aware that it's not an instantaneous thing that happens. All right, so now we can actually click this Go to Resource button down here at the bottom. So let's do that. And now we have all of the information about our Azure Data Catalog. We have the resource group that it's been assigned to, the location, the subscription, all of the tags that I used, the pricing tier that we selected, and you can actually navigate to the users here. How do we actually get into the Azure Data Catalog? Well, I'm so glad you asked. We have this Azure Data Catalog portal. So if you go ahead and just click that, it will pop open into a new tab by default. And it's going to ask you to log in. And by default, this is what you see the first time you log into your Azure Data Catalog portal. You get this nice little welcome screen that says, oh, you have a brand new Azure Data Catalog, but so far nobody's registered any data sources. Well, no kidding. We just created it. And it tells you can get started by registering those data sources now. You can either launch the application or you can use the manual entry to create new assets, to register new assets in your data catalog. So I'm going to go ahead and close that little welcome message out. And what I'm going to do is we're actually going to navigate up in the right-hand corner to the settings button. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to show you the things that you can do once you have created your data catalog. So again, there's the name of my catalog, my subscription, the location, the edition that it's using right now. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to the standard edition. And you'll notice because we haven't saved it yet, the security groups are not available, but I can still add catalog users. I haven't saved it yet, so again, I can't add glossary administrators, but I can add catalog administrators, and I can actually give my portal a title. So let's do this. Pass, again, typing in a demo. Pass Summit Demo. The title of your portal can actually have spaces in it. So I'm just going to save that. All right. And with the magic of video editing, it plopped us back over here. We still get that welcome message saying we don't have any registered data sources. Let's get rid of that. And now you'll notice up here in the upper left-hand corner, we now have a title, whereas before it was blank. So now our Azure Data Catalog title is Pass Summit Demo. All right, so let's go back in and take one quick last look at the settings on the upper right-hand side. Again, we've got our free, we switched it to standard edition. And now you can see the additional information that shows up for security groups right here. And one thing I really want to point out about using security groups is this last little important bit right here, enabling automatic adjustment of billing. So if you're going to be using security groups, which you should be using to grant access to your data catalog, just know that billing will automatically be adjusted based on the number of users in those security groups. So one thing I would highly suggest is that you actually determine the correct number or the correct people who should be using Azure Data Catalog and assign and go through those security groups before you actually enable authorization at the security group level, because it will automatically adjust that billing. And granted, it's only $1 per month per user, but what happens if you have 5,000 users in a security group, but really only 20 people of those need access? So things to think about. All right. The other thing is that we now, down here, we now also have the glossary administrators available. So we can add glossary administrators. And again, there's our portal title. And if we wanted to delete our catalog, this is where we would go to actually delete it. We're not going to delete it because we've just created it. All right. Let's get back to our slide deck. All right, so that's how you would create and configure an Azure Data Catalog. Now, let's talk about exploring your Azure Data Catalog. So how do you do that exactly? Well, you can do it through the Azure Data Catalog portal in the web browser, like I was just where we did to do all of our configuration, or you can use the REST APIs to explore the data catalog. So does everybody have their little spelunking hats on? Because we're gonna go exploring now. So let me bring up our other demo. Now I happen to have an Office 365 E5 license that includes Power BI Pro. So this is the catalog name that you get. You cannot change this. Remember I told you when we went through the creation process, you can't change the name of it. So if you do have that E5 license that includes Power BI Pro, your data catalog's name is just catalog. So I am going to go ahead and click that, and you can see I've got the standard pricing tier right here, and I can navigate to it right here. So I'm just going to do that. Now, if I had not logged in, it would prompt me for credentials. I'm using the new Microsoft Edge browser, which is based on profiles. So it knows which account to use to log in for me. But if you're not using a browser that does that, you would have to provide your credentials. And as you can see, we are in a different Azure Data Catalog. This one is called SQL Swimmer Data Assets. So this is my personal catalog that I use. And we've got some recent assets, pinned assets. You can see I have 89 assets, and 89 of them have already been annotated. I have one user, one publisher. So let's take a quick look at one that I have pinned that I go to all the time. So this is my community activity tracker database, and you can either view this information in the search screen with details, or if you prefer, you can switch it to card view. My brain doesn't work that way. I'm a details list kind of person, so that's what I prefer, but you can change that. You can change the number of results that show up on a page. So if I get rid of what's in my search, I can actually see all of the assets that are there. You can sort them, you can highlight them, whatever you want to do. And then you have, if you have, depending on the number of results per page, you can navigate through your pages over here on the right hand side. So let's get back to my community activity. So let's community activity database. There it is. All right, so once we've navigated in here, get rid of that search box, we get some summary information that shows up here at the top. So it tells us a brief description of it, tells us who the experts are, all the tags that are associated with that database, and how many tables it actually has in it up here at the top. And then down at the bottom, you get that detailed information. So there are 3 tables, and there are 3 tables listed here. So you have the name of the table, the description, who the experts are, all the tags, if it's contained in another asset. So the database is the highest level of asset information, and it's contained in that community activity database. We can see that it's a SQL Server source type. The type of object that it is a table, and then the last time that it was updated and when it was originally registered. So let's drill down. We're going to look at the events, and I hate the fact that it shows up so narrow to begin with, so I just usually go to the one other tab and come back, and then it pops it out for us. So you can give it a friendly name. So if you're using something like Dynamics or JDE, where the table names are like a combination of 25 letters and numbers that make absolutely no sense, you can give it a friendly name that makes sense. You can give it a description. Again, the experts, the tags are listed, all of your connection information. So it has the name of your server, the name of the database. We're looking at a table, so it's got a schema and the object name. So it's the name of that. If somebody wanted to request access to this, you could actually put information in here and say, call Angela. And then you could provide more detailed information. Now this right here, this view connection strings, to me, this alone is worth the price of Azure Data Catalog. I can never remember the different formats you have to use for connection strings. And look at this, they provide all of this for you. You've got your ADO.NET, your ODBC, OLEDB, and your JDBC. Now notice it doesn't actually store. See if we can zoom in here for you a little bit. There we go. So you'll notice that it doesn't actually store credentials in here. It just uses placeholders. So it's not storing the credentials, so your credentials are safe. But it gives you the format of those connection strings. Like I said, definitely worth $1 per month per user as far as I'm concerned. You can take ownership, and then it has all of your auditing information down here. Now, I said that Azure Data Catalog does not store your data in the data catalog. And there are two exceptions to that, which are turned off by default. So the first one is you can actually enable preview. So when you do exploring and you're registering these data assets, there's a little checkbox, and you'll see when we get to that demo that you can say include a preview of the data. And when you do that, it just grabs the first 20 records. It's like doing select top 20 from table name, and it only pulls in the top 20 so that you can store that in here. So that's something to be mindful of. If it's not sensitive data, absolutely by all means do it, because it's only going to help people kind of understand the data a little bit better. But if you are storing sensitive data, PII, HIPAA, anything like that, that is turned off by default. So you have to purposefully turn it on if you want that in there, just to be very clear on that. So we can see all of the different columns and the types of information that is stored in here. Then we can go look at all of the individual columns that are in this table, and it gives us the data type. You can add individual tags if you would like. And then you also, again, you've got those descriptions that you can add over here on the right-hand side. Now, the preview was one place that it would store data, but this data profile is the second place where it will store data. Again, this is turned off by default, so you have to purposefully tell the registration, when you're going through registration, to include a data profile. Otherwise, it will not include that information in there. But you can get really good data profile information here. It's not super useful for character data, other than you get the null and the distinct values, because min and max don't really mean anything as far as character data goes. But for your numerical columns, you've got a min, a max, you've got average, standard deviation, you've got your summary statistics, all that information in there. So really good information. Then you have this documentation tab. I love this documentation tab. So you can put additional information in here about this asset in particular. You can include links. So I have created a hyperlink that says, hey, I use this to populate my Power BI community activity reports. And I have this link that I can actually go to directly right here. And lastly, if you are using foreign keys, which I'm really hoping most of you are using foreign keys in your data sources if they are supported, you can see where they are, what tables they are joined to, and the column that they are joined on. So again, there's another feature just by itself is worth its, $1 per month per user for the standard edition. And that's it for exploring. And as you can see, if I go ahead and clear out this, back to the catalog. And if I go ahead and go back to my catalog and we clear out our search results, you can see all of the different data source types that I have stored in my catalog. I've got analysis services tabular models. I've got reporting services reports. I've got all kinds of stuff in here, and that's very, very cool. And for your tabular models, you can distinguish between measures and tables. Lots and lots of good stuff here. All right. That's it for exploring our Azure Data Catalog. So let's get back to our slide deck, and there we go. And that's it for exploring a data catalog. So now let's talk about how you're actually going to manage these data assets. Now that we've seen how to create one, we've seen to kind of navigate around in there. So how do we actually manage those assets? So the first way is you can use the Azure Data Catalog app. Now you can only register with using the Azure Data Catalog app, but that's one way. You can use the REST API, which you are not limited to registration. You can register, you can delete, you can update, you can do anything with the REST API. And if you have more than 5 data sources, honestly, I would seriously invest in writing, code so that you can activate or so that you can use those REST APIs to register all of your data. And then lastly, you can use the manual entry process. Again, that's only to register your data sources though. So for the Azure Data Catalog app, there are a couple of quick reminders here. So you have to download and install it before you can use it the first time. It's got to be a 64-bit machine, and it does require about 140 meg of disk space. So it's not super tiny, but it's not, Office or anything like that. And as of July of last year, it supported 54 different data source connections. So let's go ahead and take a look at adding an asset using that Azure Data Catalog app. So I am going to, all right, and the day that I'm recording my session for you guys, Azure Data Catalog registration process is down. So thankfully I had this pre-recorded for a different session that I had done earlier. So I'm just going to walk you through the process here. So how you would do this is you would go to this launch. If you've never installed it before, click that launch application, click save file, and then you would run it. Now, I already have this installed on my machine, so I don't need to do that at this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel on this. And then I am going to go over to my start menu, and I'm just going to type in Azure Data. There it is, and it pops up. So I'm going to select it. Oh, there was an update. All right, now we're signing in. So you have to sign in. This is the actual desktop application, and it's going to prompt you for your credentials. And I'm just going to log in here, put my password in, paste that in there, sign in, and there we go. So let's move this up here a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, easier to read. Now you can see there's tons and tons of different data sources, but one that I really wanted to point out is this ODBC database. So if there is not a connector, but you have the drivers for it, you can actually specify this here via an ODBC connection, and you're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and register a SQL Server data source. So I'm going to select that one and click Next. I'm going to put in the name of my server. We're going to choose the type of authentication that is needed, and I'm just going to use SQL Server authentication. So I'm going to put my username in, put a password in here, paste it from my password manager. I finally did start using one. Because you are connecting to an Azure SQL database, you have to provide the name of the database. So I'm just going to pull in from my tutorial database. Now this additional settings, all it gives you is, a command timeout, so not super advanced, but hey, at least you have that. And now we are on this select objects. So you can see at the database level, and then you have all of these different schemas that it has picked up. And when you highlight the schema, you see what objects are available within that schema. So let's go ahead and highlight at the database level. And it looks like there are 4 objects. So you can highlight an individual object and select one of those single chevrons, or you can just do the double and it will pick everything. Now here's where I was talking about. These are off by default. The preview and the data profile, they're off by default. So your data is secure. So I'm going to go ahead and put an expert in here. I'm going to go ahead and put one of my tags that I use for all of my stuff in here. It's an Azure SQL database, and I'm going to click register. And it's going to go through each of the objects, and it gives you a % completion up here. And it's done. Just like that. It's magic. It's magic. And you can either go back and register more, or you can view it in the portal. So let's go take a look. So that was that tutorial DB that we just registered. So let's look that up. And sure enough, there it is. There's those 4 tables. There's the database itself and those 4 tables. So let's drill down. We've got that summary information available at the database level. And we have the experts that I put in. And then you have all 4 of those tables that are listed individually below it. You can select one of these, and again, so because I did not include a preview, there won't be anything on that. And you can see all of the connection information down here. You can take ownership, all of that. Again, the preview is blank because I told it not to include a preview. That data profile tab is missing because we told it not to do that. We can look at the columns and the documentation. So I didn't include any documentation, so that's blank. And then we can go back to our catalog. All right, and now that's how you would add an asset with the Azure Data Catalog app. So what about the REST API? Well, you can do all kinds of things with the REST API. You can do asset operations, so you can register, delete, or search for assets using the REST API. But you can also do annotate operations, so you can add, update, search, and delete annotations. So I have a little console app that I wrote so that I can demonstrate deleting an asset with the API. So let me bring that up. Let me start it up over here. I have to drag everything over here so you guys can see it. So here's my little console app. And it's going to prompt me for my credentials. So I've just got to copy and paste from my password manager in here, put that in. And now let's go get our password, put that in here. All right. So we're going to register an order sample data set. So before we go any further, I want to show you that this order sample does not actually exist in my data catalog. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up over here, and we are going to look for this order sample. And sure enough, there's nothing there. Nothing up my sleeves, all right? I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you. All right, let's get back to this little console app. And I'm just going to hit enter. And it says it's registered. Well, let's go look, because that seemed awfully fast. So I'm going to pop this open again so we can see it. Let's go back to our dashboard. And let's search for it here, that order sample. And look, lo and behold, there it is. So how did I do this? Well, with the REST API, you can use, it uses JSON to update things. So you can build JSON files using metadata about your data sources. So you can, your console app, you can make this as powerful as you want it to be, where it goes out and it looks through a database and it loops through your table and it loops through the columns and it grabs all that information and it shoves it into a JSON file. And then that's what it uses to upload to the Azure Data Catalog portal. So when we look at this, we can see we've got, again, I do this to make that pop out. That I find that very annoying that it doesn't pop all the way out to begin with. I didn't give it a friendly name. I didn't give it a description, but you can see there's the name of my server, the name of my database, the schema that's in there. The object name is order samples. I did do a preview, so I told it to go ahead and grab some preview data. I can look at the columns that are available, so it's only got 3 columns. Any profile information. So look at this. Holy cow. It's over 9 petabytes in size. When the last time it was updated, and profile information, we have a lot of distinct values, max, min, standard, so all of your summary statistics as well. And then any documentation. So had I chose to include any documentation, it would have been in there as well. So all like that, it was magic. So let's get back to our demo app. So we've added an asset. Now let's see about deleting it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and one more time. And it says, all right, we've deleted the order sample data asset. So let's go ahead and press enter to quit. Let's pop up our browser window again. Let's go back to our portal starting page, and let's look for that same order sample again. And lo and behold, it's gone. So you can see using that REST API is super powerful and it's really fast. It's a lot faster than pointing and clicking. So if you have the ability to create an application that will trigger the REST API, I highly recommend you do it and automate that. Now, I just used a static JSON file for demo purposes, but I could have had it go out and look through a table in my database that stored all of my metadata to tell it to go out and look for things, very specific things. But you kind of get the idea there, right? Very powerful, very, very powerful. All right, so let's get back to our slide deck. And the last way to manage your data assets is through manual entry. Now, you're going to want to use manual entry for data sources that have no built-in connector within Azure Data Catalog. And you do that through the web browser. So let's take a quick look at how you would add like an unsupported data source, or if you don't have direct access, but you need to register it so that people are aware of it, and then maybe somebody else down the road who has permissions to that data source can take ownership, and then they can update the information by having it go out and re-register adding that registration information in there. So let's take a look. We're going to go back to our portal homepage, and we're going to go to the publish data. Now you can get there either by using this publish data button that's in the top center, or in the upper right hand corner you can go to the publish tab. So I'm going to click that one, and here is that create manual entry that we were looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and when that pops up, we provide all of the information. It's manually entered. So we give it a name. We can give it a friendly name. We can give it a description, how you would request access to this data source. And then you can select the type of source that it is. So look at this. This list is amazing. So you have Azure Analysis Services, multidimensional, tabular, all of the Azure things that are out there, Cassandra, DB2, Hadoop, MongoDB, Teradata, SAP HANA, all of these things you can specify. And the cool thing about this manual entry process is that depending on the source type that you pick, your options below it change. So if I pick a multidimensional, I can say, oh, it's either a dimension, a KPI, a measure, or a model. But if I go with a tabular, I get different choices. It's either a model or a table. And again, with Cassandra, you can say, oh, it's a database or it's a table, and you can pick your type of authentication. So it all depends on the type of source that you choose, the additional information that it's asked for. And you can supply all of, any additional information that you need. So if you chose data lake storage, it's a data lake, it's a directory, it's a file, you specify all of that information and the connection information. And then you can either click the create and register more, or you can create it and view it in a portal. So that's how you would manually enter any data sources, whether they're not supported or if you don't actually have the permissions to that, to register that data source. And that's it for managing your data assets. And that's the end of my presentation. So I really wanted to make sure that you go out and you fill out the session evaluation. Again, it's important for me because I want to know if I'm doing a good job, but it's also important for PASS because they need to know that they are delivering quality content. And they can only do that if you provide the feedback. And again, if you don't do it today, but you do have until Friday, November 20th at 5 p.m. Eastern to submit. And you can be eligible for prizes if you do that. That's it. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your attention and for taking time out of your day. And again, I'm super sorry we couldn't meet in person, but I am so glad that I was able to be here and virtually. And I'm looking forward to seeing how many people are putting their Twitter pics up there while this is actually while it's being replayed and I'm answering questions on the side. Again, my contact information. You can reach me Twitter, just tag me in a Twitter. If you want to send me an email, that's fine. Angela@SQLswimmer.com. I do have some reference slides that are included, and if you go out and look at the schedule for the summit, there should be a link there, I think, in how to download those. So I'll just leave my contact information up here. Thanks, everybody. Have a great summit.